Hi, I'm Terrell Turner, the host of the Business Talk Library, and today I have a special guest on, Dr. Brad Klontz. And the reason why I think this guest is very special because he is very unique because he is a financial psychologist. Now, I know all of you are probably wondering, what is that? Well, I'm going to let him tell you. So welcome to the show, Dr. Brad.
Thanks. Terrell, did you just insult me by calling me a financial psychologist? I mean, what the heck?
Well, the reason why I brought it up is because it is unique. And I don't think the audience knows enough about what a financial psychologist is to know whether it's an insult or a compliment.
Exactly. Yeah. It's an unusual thing, and most people haven't heard of it. But essentially, I'm a clinical psychologist who got extremely interested in why I make so many terrible financial mistakes. And I just got super curious about it. And so about 20 years ago, I got out of graduate school. I owed $100,000 in student loan debt. I grew up lower income, and it really freaked me out because I was taught at least, hey, don't get debt, but it was the only way I could get through school. And so I got out of school. I saw a friend of mine make $100,000 in 1 year trading stocks. And Terrell, I'm like, okay, I got it, man. This is my key to getting out of all this debt. And so I sold everything I had of value, a little bit extreme back then, put it all in the stock market. I had a fabulous 3 months, and then the tech bubble burst, and I just watched all my money melt away. And I got really curious. I'm like, okay, so why would a reasonably intelligent person do something so radically stupid with his money? And that's when I started diving into the psychology world around it, and I couldn't find anything. So actually, the field of psychology had totally ignored it, much to my chagrin, because what I wanted to do was find a book, read it, and then just set my life on the right path. I ended up having to write the books because psychology had ignored the topic. So that's really what got me interested in it.
So in that journey, what has been some of the things that stood out to you? Like, hey, these were like some aha moments when you started figuring out, like, these are reasons why people make certain decisions.
Yeah. So, as a psychologist, we got to blame our mothers, right? But that's really kind of what I did. It's not just my mother, it's my father, it's the whole crew. It's generations of poverty, essentially, is what we were dealing with. I went home and I interviewed my mom. I interviewed my father. I sat there and took notes. I'm like, what was it like for you growing up around money? What did grandma and grandpa teach you? I learned this entire family legacy of poor thinking that just got passed down through the generations. Just as an example, my grandfather on my mother's side lost all his money when he went to the bank one day during the Great Depression, and the bank was shut and closed, and it's all gone, right? Traumatic experience for him. He passed away in his 90s, living in a trailer park, never put $1 in the bank the rest of his life. So age 19 or 20, never put $1 in the bank ever again, which, by the way, isn't a great financial move. But he had such intense fear around losing all his money. And so all of a sudden my mom made sense. What I did made sense because I'm trying to do the opposite of my poor family, right? I'm trying to figure out how the wealthy people do it. So anyway, that kind of thing just had a profound impact on me. Like, this family legacy and these beliefs just get passed down. And kids, we're not even aware that this happened. I had no clue that happened. But here I am playing out this whole family thing that dates back generations.
Gotcha. Now, what was it like when, I guess, you told friends that, you were going to try to blend psychology and finance? What was their perception?
Well, it's super interesting because the field of psychology was pretty resistant to it.
Wow.
It's really fascinating. And Terrell, I did a study on psychologists and mental health people on money because it's like, that's one of those professions where you get all these, hey, you're supposed to care about people. It's not about making money, right? And you have to sit back and go, whoa, can I care about people and make money? And I'm just going to propose to you and your listeners, yes, you can. Okay. But that's just an example. They were resistant to the whole concept. Now, the financial planning world, they were wide open to it because they realized, we're our own worst enemy when it comes to our financial decisions. Many of us know better. Like, the biggest problems we have in the US are people don't save for the future and they spend more than they make. Everybody already knows that they should. This is why financial psychology is important.
Awesome. Gotcha. So outside of doing, like I said, interviews of your own family, I mean, what was that journey like for you to developing, like I said, having to write the book? Like, what was it like figuring that out?
I started to talk to people about it, clients and colleagues, and I realized everybody has this money story, right, that they're playing out. And people got excited about it because nobody ever talks about it. That's the interesting thing, right? Like, we get all these opportunities to sort out, like, who we're looking for in a wife or a husband, that kind of thing, talking to our friends about it. Nobody ever talks about money. So it's a huge taboo topic. So people got super excited about it. And what I discovered is what we call money scripts. So I started doing studies on this stuff. I started doing studies on these beliefs around money that we have. And our research has shown that they totally predict your income, your net worth, your credit card behaviors. And so that became super exciting. It's like, so if I can identify these beliefs, it's going to predict your outcomes. And what's so exciting about that is change your beliefs, you get different outcomes.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. So now before we hopped on the interview, you had your background up, you're filming courses. So what types of courses do you create?
So I've got a couple lines of courses. So one is I'm a professor. So I teach in an MBA program at Creighton University where we have an emphasis in financial psychology, behavioral finance. So I teach graduate students there. And then I also try to bring this stuff to normal people like me, people who grew up like I did, people who are just trying to better their lives. And so that's where I've been putting my efforts more recently on TikTok, if you can believe it. So I'm actually kind of famous. I'm a little bit TikTok famous, to be honest. And really what I've been doing is tailoring my message towards the young person. Like the person I was back when I was 18, I didn't know any wealthy people. I didn't know what they did. I didn't know how they thought. And so I'm super passionate about educating people at that stage of life, because at that stage of life, man, all you got to do is save $5 a day and invest it. Just as an example, like the S&P 500 has returned 10% a year for the last 100 years. So $5 a day, 42 years later, you're a millionaire. And how many people actually know that, right? People think, oh no, I gotta, and look, I'm a business person. I own businesses. I'm an entrepreneur. But you actually don't have to be an entrepreneur to become a millionaire. All you got to do is save and invest about $5 a day for 40 years. It's a pretty simple formula.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Now, what is the reception that people usually have when you start to tell them some of these, like I said, these simple things that you've learned and you've observed?
So one of the things that I've done is I've done several studies on what is the psychology and behaviors of ultra wealthy people compared to middle class and poor people. Okay. And so there's a different psychology, right? And so my thought was like, if I can get a hold of that psychology, well, first of all, I can become wealthy. And secondly, I can help other people become wealthy, because there's a set of behaviors and there's a set of beliefs. And so what's so fascinating is that, and the studies are really clear on this. So for example, ultra wealthy people, and one of the studies I did with the New York Times, a guy at the New York Times, Paul Sullivan, we compared people who had a net worth of about 11 million bucks to people who had a net worth of about 500,000 bucks. And what we think they do with their money is totally wrong. So we have this perception that people with 11 million bucks, self-made people, that they're driving, Mercedes and Lamborghinis, and they all have yachts and private chefs and helicopters. That's not what's going on. The way that these people became wealthy is they actually saved their money. They didn't spend it. So that's sort of the key, right? That's the only way to get there. And so just as an example, we saw those people and they paid about twice as much for stuff. So get this, they had 18 times more money, but their car was twice as good. Their house cost twice as much. Wow. They had $800 watches. They weren't, $10,000 Rolexes. So I think a big part of it is we have this false idea of what wealthy people do. And what happens is people get a little bit of success. So like, let's say you're hustling and you went and got your MBA and now you're making $100,000 a year. Then what you do is you go out and you lease a Mercedes, you buy a Rolex. You do all these things to kind of show that you have status and show that you have wealth. That's actually the opposite of what self-made ultra wealthy people do, because you do that and you're always trying to, bang back the creditors. You're never getting ahead. It's this mindset of saving and investing that frankly, you asked me for how people receive it. People who middle class poor, they don't believe me. To be honest with you, that's what I get.
Wow. Now, so you mentioned like I said, the research that you've done and the courses. So where can people find or get access to, to view that or to see that work?
So first of all, TikTok, I'm Dr. Brad Klontz on all social media. And then bradklontz.com is my website where I kind of store everything that I'm doing. So there, I own an asset management firm too. So we manage wealth for people. And I do a lot of work on social media, and I have a lot of my studies. So I mentioned studies. So if you're a real nerd and you like to get, you want to read about statistical analysis and all that stuff, I got all my studies listed there too.
Okay. Awesome. Now, So a couple of questions that I like to ask every guest that comes on is, as you talked about, like, your asset management and just, the different entrepreneurial ventures that you've been in. So what have been, like one challenge that you faced in trying to build those things that you were like, I have to figure out how to get over this if I'm going to be successful at this?
Fabulous question. And what I would say is that what I have to overcome is the hurdle of my poor/lower middle class mindset. So I've got this lower middle class. My mom says we're middle class except lower. And I'm like, Mom, they got words for that. And I know you don't want to utter them, but I understand. So, because she always wanted to make a better life for us, right? So it's that mindset. It's a huge hurdle. So it's so hard. I call it do-it-yourself-itis, right? Like there's like, you know who did our taxes growing up is my auntie did it because she was good. She was good with taxes, right? We didn't go pay a CPA or anything like that. So for me, the hurdle is you got to get expert advice. You got to consult with a CPA. I know those are scary initials when you grew up where I did, or a financial planner, or a business coach, or an attorney. And it's a huge mindset shift because immediately you go, well, those people cost money and I don't have any money. And it's like, well, guess what? I get it. And you don't need to hire them as staff members, right? You can just pay for an hour of their time. So you'll find people who, just pay a couple $100 to a CPA for an hour of their time and pick their brain. And I'm going to tell you what, in that 1 hour, they can save you tens of thousands of dollars by going down all these stupid roads because you don't know what you're doing and you're fumbling around and you're just trying to do your best. And you're asking your friends and they don't know either because they haven't done it. And so it's sort of getting into that another group of people who are a step or two ahead of where you want to be, who have this knowledge and expertise, have this bird's eye view of what another 100 different entrepreneurs are doing and just picking their brain. That is pure gold.
Also, for everyone that is watching and everyone that is listening, I did not prep that answer. I mean, everyone knows I'm a CPA and my background is corporate finance consulting. So it's just like, I did not prep him with that answer. That is his answer.
It's true. It's true. That's the one I always mention because it was the biggest hurdle for me.
Awesome. Now, the other question I like to ask every guest that comes on is also when you think about your journey, and you kind of alluded to it some is what's, one lesson that you've kind of learned in that path of, hey, your expertise of, finance psychology that you think, hey, entrepreneurs and business owners should grasp this lesson if they're going to be effective and successful in that area of their business?
So I would say the most powerful lesson for me, so the one is get some help. The number two is, you need to get the mindset of the people who are doing what you want to do. You need to get that mindset. And so it's almost like going to another country. It's almost like being an immigrant. You have to learn a new language. You got to learn a new way of looking at the world. And so one of the most powerful hacks I've ever had is for myself too, is if there's something I want to do, I go find somebody who did it or is a step or two ahead. And that's a good caveat because, you want to be a life coach. Tony Robbins is probably not going to have coffee with you. He doesn't know you, but you can find someone a step or two ahead. So for example, in writing books, if you talk to the people in your circle, unless they're authors, they're going to tell you about all the people who wanted to write books and couldn't, and how hard it is, and how, you don't make any money doing it, whatever. Find somebody who's done it because they're going to have this mindset. Well, of course you can do it. Yeah. I mean, of course you can. These are just the things you need to do, and so you want to find people who have that mindset.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Brad, thank you so much for coming on to show, sharing, your story and for explaining to us what a finance psychologist is. So now I can say, I would take that as a compliment.
Well, anytime you're throwing the word psychologist around, people get a little squirrely,
Well, I have absolute respect for it. And like I said, because I am a CPA and, I just, helping people navigate and helping businesses navigate those decisions when it comes down to money, I realize that there's so much about money decisions that people don't realize those little bad habits that they have that they bring into their business. And it's just like, well, here's the reason why your business isn't, growing like you want it to, because you got to make the small tweaks. So I completely agree with, like I said, the perspective that you shared. Thanks for tuning in to the Business Talk Library. If you like what you heard and you want to hear more, be sure to click the subscribe button and follow us on all social media platforms as the Business Talk Library.